Aloha, I'm Daniel Mo, and I am a glass artist. I blow and sculpt soft glass. It's a type of glass that we gather out of a furnace on the end of a blowpipe. I took my first gather out of the furnace in 1989, so I've been working with glass for 36 years. And when I remember it was at the University of Wisconsin, and the glass studio was a very intense environment with the fire and the personalities that were in the studio were very intimidating to me. And so I was a broad area art major. I took all the media. I waited to the last semester to try glass. And I remember the first day I went in there, went up to the furnace, and approaching the dragon, you know, it's this roaring furnace with flames coming out the door. And I was nervous, I was scared. But I went up to the furnace and I took that first gather, and I held the pipe with my hands too close to the end of the pipe, and I burned my hands. But I came out with this, the material is mesmerizing, it's seductive, you know? And just the hot glass on the pipe itself is beautiful already. It's whatever us artists, glass artists do with the glass enhances and also makes the glass art our very own. But the material itself is already beautiful. Once I started working with glass, it was difficult to stop. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I became obsessed with glass, and I would dream about it. And when you create a piece in the studio, after it's finished, you put it in the annealing oven, and you have to wait for 24 hours for the piece to be done. And so, like, every day is like Christmas, you know? There's this thing in the box that I can't wait to open and see what's in there, because it looks so different than how it looks on the end of the pipe when it's hot and the intensity of everything. Open the box and see this piece, like, oh my gosh, I created this. You know, that happens every day in the studio to this day. I was able to work with the professor and the university since that was my last year of college in 1989. But I was able to work out sort of a studio assistant and teacher assistant and be around that studio then. He let me audit the class. For the next 10 years, I was able to have access to that studio. Thanks to Jim Ingebretson. Thank you so much for that beginning, because so much of developing the skills and developing the work of being a glass blower is getting time in the studio. And getting time in the studio, experimenting, playing with different techniques. I was very fortunate to be able to have that decade of time to be able to practice. A lot of times, you know, there are different ways that artists enter into the market, the glass market. The young apprentices take a long time, and they're often not even paid at the beginning. Take a long time to familiarize themselves working around the master. There's always one master glass blower in the tradition, the maestro, and you're there to serve him and learn from him. We had visiting artists come in to give demonstrations and show us and talk to us about their work and the greater world outside. What's interesting is at the university where I studied, my teacher was a student of Dale Chihuly, who is he's probably the most famous. He made glass famous to the common person. So I'm in that lineage. My teacher was his student. And he had a philosophy of put the students and the glass together and just see what happens. And so that's what basically my roots of just playing and experimenting with the glass. So there were some artists that came to the university and told me about Pilchuck Glass School, which is just outside of Seattle. It's a school that was developed, masterminded by Dale Chihuly and a group of artists back in the early 70s. And from there, I was introduced to the community of Pilchuck, and in 1999, I spent the entire summer there. And I have chicken skin right now. They called it the Superstar Session, the Superstar Summer, because that was still in a time when a lot of the old European masters were still around and still alive. And there were a lot of very talented American masters that all converged on Pilchuck that summer, and I got to be there. And I was able to be with and talk to all of these great artists. And that just opened my eyes to the possibility of what could be, what I could possibly do, what is possible. And from there, ever since then, I've had way more ideas and way more inspiration than I've had time in the studio. So after Pilchuck, I had an opportunity to come to Hawaii in the year of 2000, Y2K. I had to decide where I'm gonna be during Y2K, and I decided to come to Hawaii. And just as I came to Hawaii, Hugh Jenkins, the person who started the Punahou Glass High School Glass program, he had moved to the Big Island where I was moving and started a public access glass studio, and I was invited to be a part of it. Just a perfect alignment, perfect timing. So I was there for 6 years. It was the first time that I had the pressure to make something that I had to sell it. You know, I had the pressure of, I'm no longer in school, I'm no longer just practicing, now is the real deal. I started by renting the studio 2 days a week, and then I did markets 3 days a week. So I'm selling my work on the street, and I'm doing markets for 6 years, the first 6 years. And while I was doing that, I was doing marketing research, talking to the people who were buying my things, and really starting to understand what people want, but also like how I can bring my inspiration to the audience in a way that it's marketable, you know, sellable. And that's when I started developing pieces that exemplified this new environment that I have just moved into, with the ocean and the volcano, and also this rich cultural Polynesian tradition. I see that there's a language in like the tapa and the tattoo work of the traditional Polynesians, and I feel like I'm a beginner again. Like I know nothing about it. And last night I met this tattoo artist, and he does traditional tattoo work, and he came up and he started telling me the definitions of, well, this means this, and this means that, and this next to this means that. And I've just been going with intuition. I've been exploring. Oftentimes I'll do a piece. This was very calculated, the navigation, the navigator's hand, when you can put your thumb on the horizon and you can measure how far the star is from the horizon, and that way I can locate myself on the ocean, like what degree I am compared to where I was yesterday when I'm trying to find Tahiti from Hawaii. I first got introduced to sandblasting images into glass and designs and patterns into glass by that professor at the university back in Wisconsin, Jim Ingebretson. His work is primarily blowing bowls, but he would take pieces cut out of vinyl and then apply them to the piece and sandblast the inside of the piece. He had his own unique style. And I always had that in the back of my mind, like one day I'm gonna use something like that. And it wasn't until it was 2016 that I became once again inspired by that technique. It was actually here in Maui. I was staying, the same friend I'm staying with now, and she had a fish hook carved out of stone in front of her house. And that image hit me. I thought, wow, if I could make one of those out of glass, that would be really impressive. And then use that sand carving technique with some patterns on the outside. So a piece such as this is one of my favorite pieces that I've made so far. The color underneath is gold topaz, a transparent gold topaz. And the color on the surface is a jade green color. And so what I do to create this effect is, so I gather clear glass out of the furnace. And so on the end of my blowpipe is crystal clear ball of glass. And then I gather one more time, which doubles the size of that glass. And at this point, I blow some air into it so it becomes this bubble of clear glass. While that second gather of glass is still hot, I roll it in what we call frit, which is colored glass that has been crushed and sifted to a certain size, and roll the clear glass on top of it. Now that clear glass is hot and sticky, so those jimmies, which they've been called, they're like the little candies on the outside of an ice cream cone. When you roll it into the fritted glass, all those little stones stick to the outside of that bubble. And so now it's got all this texture, this rough texture on the outside. And then melt that in and it becomes smooth. Now the whole glass that was clear is gold. It's a golden color. And from there, I got to let that cool down a bit because I'm going to gather some more clear glass over the top of it. And if I don't let it cool down, then it's just going to drip off. It needs to have the structure integrity of the colder glass. So then I gather the third gather of glass on the outside of it. So now that gold is encased. It's clear underneath it. It's clear on the surface. I take that third gather of glass and I go back to the color booth and I use powdered glass in a sifter, like a kitchen sifter for flour. And I sift this powdered jade green glass onto the surface. So now it appears as if I have a big bubble of jade green glass. You can no longer see the gold. And from there, I blow out the shape. This shape is created by, it's a big round bubble, and I flatten it with cork paddles to just make it like a flat bubble, and I drill a hole in the middle of it. And then now I just have a flat bubble with a hole in the middle. It kind of looks like a bagel on the end of a stick. And from there I punty it and I turn it around, and now there's a hole on the top and in the middle, and it's on the punty. Now I'm going to work the other side of the piece. So from now I'm heating this in the reheating oven, and I get it particularly hot with a hot torch right in this area right here. And I take these big shears once this is hot enough, and I just cut through the glass to that bubble. So now this is a bubble that's about this tall with a cut to the middle. And I can heat it up now, and I pull these points out. And it pulls out into the shape of the fish hook. And once that's sculpted and finished, I put it into the annealing oven, into the Christmas box, and it anneals overnight. And the next day, I get to go see what I made. And it comes out in this shape, but it's all jade green. And then at that point, I will take vinyl with this nice sticky material on the backside. So I wrap it up. So now it just looks like it's a white vinyl piece of sculpture. And with a pencil, I can draw these designs. So I spend, hours drawing the design on the outside and refining it and erasing it and doing it over until I finally have the design that I like. Then I come with an X-Acto knife and I carve away, like this section right here, I'll carve with the X-Acto knife right there and I'll peel the vinyl off. So wherever you see the gold color is where I've removed the vinyl. And once that vinyl is removed, I bring it to the sandblaster, and the vinyl protects the area that it's still at, where the vinyl still is, and it allows me to carve through the surface color to reveal the undercolor. And then when that's all finished, I take the vinyl off, and so now this is just matte. This is just a matte texture on this section. Now this is shiny. So I go back to the sandblaster again, and just real softly I'll go over the whole thing and make it all a nice even matte color. And then I put a nice finish on it to bring out the luster. Otherwise it looks pretty dry, and it gives it that nice glowing effect. This technique right here is called pittuto. This is an Italian cold working technique where I have a lathe with it's called a radius diamond wheel, and I take this to the diamond wheel and I press it against the wheel, and it creates one of these little divots in here. And I do that in a very determined and controlled way to get that entire pattern in there. Pittuto and tatau, two wonderful, interesting words to say together. Now this is more of the traditional tattoo design. In the hot shop, it's that intense environment where I have a team of guys and girls sometimes, and the music's going and we all have our thing to do, and it's exciting and energetic and alive. And once you start a piece, you can't finish, so we're all almost like jumping on the same wave, surfing together, And so there's that part, and then when I bring it in to the studio to design this stage of the piece, I'm by myself. And I'm listening to music, maybe not. And I'm just tuning in to where I'm gonna lay these patterns on the piece. After a little bit, like if you're doing some breath work or yoga or meditation, it starts to have a life of its own. And it starts to inform me as to what's next and what's happening next. And it literally feels like I'm being spoken to. At first I'm controlling it and I'm like, okay, this is the plan, this is what I'm gonna do. But then it takes over and I'm just trusting and going with what is like being shown to me. I'm learning as it's coming out of me, and as certain people see it, and they'll come and tell me what it means or what it means to them. And it's just an ongoing process of discovery. Once the piece is done and I set it on the pedestal, I become one of the observers of that piece, which is no longer me, but I'm looking at it as if I'm the audience. Like, oh, and starting to see it maybe for the first time, actually.